Okay, welcome everybody to Electronic Sound Summit 2020. Kicking things off today, social media, friend or foe. This is a topic that I was super excited to speak about and also just to host. I think it's so relevant right now, particularly with a lot of stuff we've seen happen in the media recently, and that extends through into our world as well. So we've got an awesome panel today. We'll go around. I won't introduce them. I'll let them introduce themselves, give a little bit of background about what you do and why you're here.
Hey, I'm MK. I work for a company called Rising Digital. We've been going for about 11 years and we do all the sort of digital marketing, content creation for artists from like smaller scale to larger labels, brands, the works. So yeah, a bit about me.
My name is Keelan, one half of DJ production duo Nautica. I also digital marketing manager for an education company called Future DJs. Digital marketing there, kind of social media as well, so yeah, that's me.
I'm Jack Broom. I'm an artist manager for Elevate Artist Management. I look after artists across the house and techno spectrum.
My name's Scott. I'm an artist also known as Unders and founder of Warrior Sound. And basically I use social media to sort of have a fully fledged business, make sure my music's profitable before it's even been released.
Sweet. Okay, so I guess let's kick things off with the positives here, right? So what would you say social media looks like for an artist in an ideal world when it goes right? Let's kick off with Jack. With some of your experience with your artists.
Oh, right. I think a good example might be an artist we just let go, but called Sosa, that broke through. He's from Liverpool. And how it worked for him was basically he was working away in the studio for a good 6-7 years, something like that. But then one of his tracks broke through social media. It got played at Forbidden Forest Festival, and the video went viral across a social media channel, Tech It Deep, and it's gone on to, I think it's like 250,000 views. But off the back of that, he had all big DJs then slide into his DMs and basically ask him for the track. He'd been trying to sign to all these artist labels in the past, and it basically helped elevate his career. And open the doors that he hadn't been able to open before, just off the back of sending it to Tech It Deep, who first featured it.
Nice, man. And I know when we were talking before in the green room, Kaylin, you were like definitely, I guess, for social media with a lot of what you do.
Yeah. Well, just from an artist perspective, I wouldn't be in the position I am today without social media. I think right from like breaking records, like and actually getting records signed off the back of social media, these records actually were pushed out viral. From my perspective of big DJs playing these records, that then drives sales, which then in turn drives gigs and bookings. So to actually make money and monetize gigs and DJing, it's all done through social media from my perspective. And I think, like for artists, I think you can't grow in a career and actually develop it into a career without it. I just think it's based around everything we do when it comes to studio and being in the studio. That's also very important, but if the music isn't getting heard, what's the point? And I think that's just kind of the key, really.
Yeah, for sure. And MK, from like the professional kind of viewpoints on this, what's your take?
For me, it's all about like connecting people to like audiences that you might not be able to get to for whatever reason. Like as a fan, you've been able to be connected to experiences that might be out of your reach. Like for someone who lived somewhere that maybe they didn't have the financial means to access a gig, like you can watch it on a live stream now. There's all these different possibilities, and like we work with one artist who literally loves being connected to his fans and goes through his DMs after every single show and personally responds to every fan, and you couldn't do that without social media. So I think in an ideal world, taking all the bad away, like that connectivity and experiences you might not be able to have otherwise is what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any ways that you see artists really building engagement well, or any kind of tactics that if people are starting out, they can use to help drive that engagement?
I mean, for every sort of every artist is different. Like, there's not one size fits all. So for people just starting out, we always say, like, now is the time to experiment. Trial what you enjoy, what content you like making, what works, what connects with the people that you might only have a small following now, but what connects with them, and like build upon that. A massive one for us is community management, like engaging with people that you admire, you want to aspire to be like, pages you're interested in, music you enjoy, and engaging with their fan base. And then maybe you'll get followers that way who actually share values that you have, and building that community that way, like reaching out to people.
Kind of builds your respect in the industry as well if an artist is reaching out to their fan base and engaging.
Yeah, 100%. And then, like, Scott, in terms of building up Warrior Sound, how has social media played a part in that for you?
Yeah, so it's massively come from essentially YouTube. I've just gone to the point of making content that was essentially, like we're saying, something that I liked making, the kind of things that I thought would have been useful and valuable to me when I was starting as an artist, and just building a relationship through that. So I've attracted a lot of fans of my music who are also interested in music production, so it's just been loads of like back and forth interaction, which is something that the barrier's gone. So like we're saying, someone who maybe can't afford to go and learn these things, I'll get questions like, how did you make such and such in a particular track? Or how did you do such and such with a vocal? I'll go there and make a video responding to that individual, knowing it's going to be useful for lots of other people. And by doing that, I've ended up working with lots of other like big brands like Isotope, Waves, IK Multimedia, hundreds of others who are now sponsoring me essentially to make my music.
Okay, so what I'm hearing everyone saying is it's essentially about taking general social awareness and social interaction, but using social media as a platform to really scale that in a much bigger way. Have you seen any examples, and this is just to everybody, where either an artist or a label has done social media really well in terms of like just getting out there and creating that community?
I mean, I think Defected Records do it brilliantly, in essence, where they break down the content at levels where it engages with people outside of the music industry. Like, for example, they'll have like a video of like a funny guy dancing. They'll put a Defected track over the top that'll go viral. The track then gets millions of views, listens off the back of this kind of comedic content, you know. And then that then will drive sales of the record and boost streaming numbers. Like the Pump It Up track by Endor, massive streamable track and has now gone viral. You hear it chanted at football stadiums, and it is in essence a club record. And without social, it wouldn't really have got to the scale it's actually got to, you know.
Yeah, we work with Axtone, and they've just smashed it in terms of like creating that community. Like, the music's there, people are like, there's a focus on releasing, but the main focus is about the Axtone family, the Axtone crew, which is all the like artists on the label. It's about like championing all the people that are releasing on the label, and they've got like a Axwell Facebook group where people can just go and talk, and it is that community feel, and like people are engaged because they want to be there and they find, like you said, value in what they're putting out.
Yeah, to further go on from that, how I got into dance music is through Above and Beyond, and their whole thing has always been about inclusivity of the fans, making everyone feel welcome, and it is essentially what it is word of mouth marketing, which is the most cost effective and the most powerful tool you can use in any type of marketing, really, not just in music, by engaging, you know, a core group of fans. Rather than trying to attract new fans, focus on the ones that you've got, because then they'll be loyal to you and they'll send out the message for you, which essentially then goes further, and people trust somebody else's voice over trying to directly market to them, saying, buy this record, do this, buy that.
Yeah, definitely. So it's the 1,000 true fans concept. If you can nurture that core group, then that gives you a career as an artist, right? Yeah. Nice. Okay, so obviously in today's world, we're super reliant on the internet and in turn social media. For anyone old enough to remember a time without it, What challenge do you think artists face now in terms of having it, and how do you guys think it was maybe different before?
I'd say one of the biggest things now having it is the usage of it, as in using it as a consumer rather than as an artist or as a business. You can be on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, the list goes on, and you can get sucked into each platform and lose hours of your day where you could be producing music, connecting with fans, making new content, essentially running what you do as a business. You're just noodling about on social media, and I think that's a massive distraction that people face when they start diving into it. The other thing is splitting yourselves too thin instead of focusing on one key thing. So I primarily focus on YouTube. I'd rather do one thing really well than try and split between 10 things and kind of half-ass them, essentially. I think that's one of the biggest issues, especially like an independent artist faced with that kind of thing, yeah.
So what can an artist do if they're starting out? How do they decide what channel to focus on? And do you guys have any tips for how to avoid getting sucked into that just constant scroll?
I mean, I think a massive challenge for artists today is staying relevant, and social media has kind of played a negative impact on that. So you see artists constantly kind of falling down the rabbit hole of pushing out throwaway content that isn't really that great, just to try and keep up with the Joneses. And you know, they can kind of invest a lot of their time in trying to constantly promote themselves in ways that's probably not actually having a positive impact on their career, on their bookings, you know. However, if done correctly and they do understand engagement, even though from my perspective, you can get bookings off a social post. You know, say you put a video up of one gig, other promoters will see that and be like, oh yeah, they look really cool, they look really great, yeah, I'm going to book them for my gig, you know. So it is kind of like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think one thing that we see a lot is like that comparison culture, like why has X got this many followers and their photo got this many likes, whereas I only got this many followers and this many likes. You have to like massively self-evaluate, like what kind of artist are you, what kind of audience do you want to attract, where are you at in your career? Like nothing, like there's no like manual of what you should be putting out there. You've got to find out what works for you, and what might work for this artist with however many followers might not work for you as an artist or your fans, and you might not even enjoy that kind of content. Like you've got to figure out what you find value in, not what just because they're doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That comparison culture thing is absolutely massive. I used to get that a lot with clients as well, and they'd be like, oh, well, so-and-so got more likes than me, and it really does eat you up inside. And I think that if you think it's bad for, I don't know, the top streaming artists of this world, they're doing it. Imagine how bad it is for people just starting out. So I think that's a very real problem. How do you guys see that kind of playing out? And, you know, do you have any advice for artists with dealing with that kind of, I guess, stress that comes from the comparison culture? I
mean, I think the whole comparison culture really kind of alleviates the problem of artists trying to push things forward before it's their time. Rushing into management, rushing into agencies, signing away things where, you know, it's really just not their time. Whereas, you know, if they kind of did slow things down and kind of focus on the music and focus on building their brand and actually getting their content to a level where, whoa, this is really cool, this is really engaging, it's snappy, and then it actually will benefit them more in the future when these things do come along. Like, personally, from our perspective, currently have no management and no artists, managing everything ourselves, and it's working in our favour, because when the agencies and the management do come, they'll be at the right time. And I think, you know, building a brand, I think I have a lot of like kind of satisfaction of seeing ourselves grow from our own platform. And you know, again, there is no manual for this. There's no kind of handbook. You kind of have to guess as you go along. But you know, if you take your time with it and don't rush things and don't compare yourselves to others, then, you know, you will benefit from it in the long run.
Are there any ways of safeguarding yourself as an artist, though, so you don't, I guess, take that mental hit?
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways you can approach it. You can straight out not use social media as a consumer. So don't be looking at other artists, don't look at how many followers they've got, don't look at how well a particular thing went down. Or the other thing is take a really good perspective on it, that someone else in your industry, an artist that maybe you like or is perhaps like a parallel to you, has suddenly got 1 million views on YouTube, and just be really fucking happy for them that they've managed to break through, because you've just seen that if they can do it, you can 100% do that as well. And that you can just go through that level. You've seen that it's going to work. You've seen what they've done. On the other complete flip side of that, look at others who aren't doing as well as you and help them along. Literally, like you've got the metaphor of the rising tide lifts all boats. If you're that person bringing everyone else with you, you're going to just bring them all up. You're going to keep growing. Everyone else is going to keep growing. You can help each other and build a community. So I generally produce drum and bass, and we have a massively strong community in that kind of area. You can hashtag something, everyone else is going to share it, other people get on it, DJs off the track and promote it for you. And you don't need to go and focus on what that one individual is doing. A really good example is Sigma. If you guys will remember, a few years back, they like rocketed through to #1. Literally, we booked them about 9 months before that, and they were saying it was going to be their last gigs. They were done, and then they managed to get the license for Somebody to Love. They got the sample approved, and they went to #1, and they're now probably the biggest D&B artist out there. Just be massively happy for the people that managed to get there, and don't dwell on it and think, oh, that should be me. Like, go and earn it. You've seen them do it. You know it can happen. Use that as an inspiration. It's a massive thing.
Yeah, just further to all of that, what I would say is, I mean, the first thing I would say to any artist when we're managing them or they're coming to us is, like Callan was saying, don't rush the process. The thing that a lot of artists start to do is, as soon as they start making tracks, they get something signed, and then that's it. They lose focus of what the original goal was, of enjoying it, going in the studio, experimenting. You know, you're not supposed to find your sound straight away. You know, some artists it takes 10, 15 years. So it's like not rushing that process and respecting it and just enjoying it, and then it'll click into place when you least expect it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Have you ever had it with any of the artists that you've been managing where they have been trolled online or they've been receiving a lot of negative comments?
No.
Damn you. Okay. MK, have you experienced it with any, I guess, damage limitation or...
Yeah, so we worked with an artist a few years ago who was not having the best time online. There was a campaign going on, and there was just a lot of hate heading their way. They obviously weren't coping with it very well, because obviously it's not very nice when people are sending you awful DMs. Their manager basically brought us in to take that away. Now, they did not want to relinquish control, like that was their space, and the manager, like it's trusting that artist-manager relationship, they basically convinced them to take a step back. We sort of came in, and there's loads of stuff in the back end that you can limit people's access to you. So you can change the settings so only people you follow back can DM you. You can put like, if people are like being horrendously bad, you can put certain phrases in that just instantly block them from your page. There's like things you can do yourself without, that you don't need a social team to do that. But obviously if you're trying to get away from the hate and you don't want to see it, then obviously that's when there's like a buffer. But yeah, it's just trusting that artist-manager relationship, and maybe sometimes do relinquish a bit of control for your own headspace as well.
Yeah, and I do think that, you know, when you are putting yourself out on a public platform, that you are leaving yourself open to this hate. And, you know, in an industry where it is kind of very kind of all eyes are on you kind of way. And when you do receive this hate, it is like part and parcel almost, and it is just kind of like expected at a certain level, which, you know, obviously it's not a great thing, but, you know, it does kind of come with the exposure.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, that's a very easy thing to say, isn't it? To be like, oh, well, you're putting yourself out there, therefore deal with it.
I think we have a responsibility as consumers as well. Like, obviously, hopefully times are changing with everything that's going on at the moment, but like we have a responsibility as a consumer. Like, there's a person behind it at the end of the day, so everyone should remember that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's hard because the amount of times we've spoken on social media tutorials and stuff, and you're always told, reply to everybody, engage with any of the comments. So it's that double-edged sword. You're spending the time reading the comments, but then not every comment's going to be nice. And I think that's pretty challenging. But I guess it is about remembering to, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. But it is hard not to go home and think about that.
So it's just, if someone's doing that as well, just have a little empathy for that person. They are spending a portion of their day to consume something you've done and be overly negative about it. Like, they're not in a good space at the end of the day. Like, they're literally spending their limited life being negative about something you've created, done, said, which you've got to have empathy for that. Like, whatever reason they're going down that route as well, it's not a great thing. And like, if you can stomach it, engage with them. Because sometimes these people would just like, I was just having a bad day, I'm really sorry, and they'll go and remove these things. Some people are just straight up toxic. I'm not going to take that away, but you know, you got to have empathy going both ways. That is a person as well who's spending that time doing that.
Yeah, just to further go on from that, obviously I said no in the first place, but I think it's because we would say we're proactive with our artists in the way we deal with, like, saying to them, you know, if comments were to come up, take a step back and think, do you really need to respond to that if it's a negative comment? Because a lot of the time the comments are so destructive that you're not going to like serve any purpose by going back in and trying to defend yourself. So there's that instance, and also, like I said, the empathy aspect of the likelihood is if someone's being negative, they're probably in a lot worse space than you are. So.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's that thing. It's either embrace it and just be like, this is a great opportunity to respond and get a load more engagement on my post and see that post go through the roof. Or if you're not of that mindset, as you say, have some empathy and think, Jesus, this guy's taking, or girl's taking the time to really be bitter about my post. They must be in a really shit headspace. Some people would say social media is a scourge of society and we should just delete it all. Would that be career suicide for an artist?
For me, absolutely. I would have no business.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. I wouldn't be where I am today without social media, and it's how, you know, you as an artist, especially when you're putting tracks out there in the studio, like an Instagram story of a video up, and you get like 10 reactions like, oh, this is sick, this is sick, this is sick. It helps you progress further as an artist, as a producer as well, because you're like, right, okay, this is what my fans like. They kind of want to hear more of this, in essence. But even when it comes down to like gigs and, you know, informing people of new releases, I think that it wouldn't be possible without it, you know. And then that's the kind of way where, like, although music is very disposable these days, but if I were to release a track in like 3 months' time, I want the promo campaign. I kind of want the lead up to actually make that track of maximum impact. And without that, it wouldn't be possible without social media.
Yeah, but I mean, we managed fine for decades before, right?
Yes and no. It has worked in years before, but like we now are living in the digital era completely, and you know, I think that we were very heavily reliant on it, too reliant on it in a sense where if it was deleted, that we probably wouldn't be able to function. And I think, you know, in essence of like breaking records and things, you know, a great example would be the Roberto Suraci track Undefected last summer. That has now over however many million views, streams, the lot. You know, it's very heavily monetized through digital platforms, and that was possible through videos of Marco Carola playing it last summer. That probably wouldn't have got signed and got to the level of where it did as a commercial radio club track if it wasn't for this social media platform, if it wasn't for the Instagram videos and the Twitter videos and everything. So, you know, I think it would be very hard to cope without it if we were to go back to, you know, the days of, you know, just purely relying on radio plugin for exposure.
Well, yeah, I was just going to follow on from that and say, you think about how much electronic dance music as an industry has grown, and it's arguable that it's because of the proliferation of social media platforms. Because it was a community anyway before that, the community has then grown, and this tool kind of goes hand in hand with what electronic dance music was originally about, inclusivity and an underground movement, and that's why it's grown. Whereas before, maybe, it was a hell of a lot harder. Like I was saying backstage, 20 years ago, you get people that moan online now that they're paying £10 for an advert and they're only reaching X amount of people, but they're still targeted people. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, you put an ad in a newspaper for several £100 and they wouldn't be the right people that you're targeting.
Yeah, no, 100%. Is there anything that you think that we could maybe learn from the kind of pre-social media internet generation and ways of music marketing that we could apply to the modern era? I mean, this is obviously, I'm probably the oldest person on this panel, so I'm kind of speaking to myself on this one a little bit. I guess for me, so one of the things we talked about backstage was the importance of the social aspect of dance music and how it's really about coming together and engaging with people. You speak to a lot of DJs who are like, I can't get a gig, and you're like, well, what was the last gig you went to? And they're like, oh, I haven't. I don't go out and support other artists or other promoters, and it's about getting out there and being really sociable. So I guess for me, if I was to answer my own question, it would be that being real and being sociable and using social media to amplify that, to speak to people, as you were saying, speak to them online, but then meet them in person. I mean, you were saying that's how it signs a lot of records for you.
Yeah, well, for me, for example, two kind of biggest examples would be one EP last summer, kind of hit like top 30 Beatport charts. That was on Divine Sounds, and that was through actually going and meeting Sound Divine, sending DMs through Instagram and things, and basically just kind of putting a personal touch, going down and meeting and making the face-to-face connections. And now she's a close friend. Same thing with releasing Solid Grooves with Michael Beebe. When you actually go out and make these face-to-face connections, it can really solidify a release. They will then go out of their way to put a lot of promotion behind it. So the Divine Sounds record actually was pushed back 3 months after I met Sam, so they could give her. So she wanted to give it a 3-month run-up then, just because she was like, I want to push this as much as possible, and she did that, and it, it then went on to, it's sitting on like 120,000 streams now and things like that. So an artist will want to kind of give you the most out of it because they know you as a person.
And what are some of the best ways, if you are wanting to reach out to somebody on social media and make that initial connection, what ways are you finding working for you?
The Instagram DM, it's very simple, but if the language used is correct and you're not being very brash about it, you kind of, again, if you're putting your own personality into the message, even if it's like 2 lines, 2 sentences, it's like, hi, XXX, love your music, that kind of thing, but also kind of, just being a nice person, I think definitely helps. Whereas if you're sending blank messages like, why are you ignoring me and all this here kind of thing, it can have a negative impact and they will not listen to your music. Like I know there's people that send me music that, I probably won't even open their message now just because they kind of blanket kind of target. And that's kind of, one of the negatives where it is so instantly accessible and easy to connect with people, almost too easy.
Yeah, definitely. You had a good point.
Just further to that as well, just keep it light and breezy. Don't try and go into a long, massive message, because especially if you're trying to connect with a bigger artist or someone that runs a label, they've only got a finite amount of time. So that initial contact, keep it light and casual and don't get too deep. And then if they happen to be online and they reply, you jump on that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, some good points there, I guess, comes back to just being sound and being real with it and being quite human. We mentioned before, Scott, you were saying about managing your social media usage in terms of time and how it can really kind of eat into that. And we know that as an artist, the biggest thing you can do for your career is actually have a great record out. So what are some of the ways that you maybe yourself manage your time on social?
Yeah, so I'm kind of ruthless with this. So if you use an iPhone and you've got screen time on it, I've got 15 minutes of social media access a day. That's it. After that, it locks me out for the day. That's literally how I manage it. So I can consume for up to 15 minutes to see what's going on with everyone in the world. If I've got any posts to reply to, things like that, all within that 15 minutes, and that is it for the day.
Is that a specific app, or is that in the iPhone itself?
It's built into iPhone now, yeah, just called Screen Time. It's in your settings. You can lock down specific apps or all of social media. So like if there's one app you need longer access to, exclude that, for example. But yeah, that's my ruthless way of locking it down.
I mean, like from my perspective, I'm sure MK is the same. It's very difficult to manage your time when you actively work in a profession where your job is to manage socials. So like I probably spend about 5 hours a day sitting in Facebook Ad Manager, and if I was locked out of that, then I wouldn't be able to function, my business wouldn't be able to function, I wouldn't be able to grow. So, you know, it is tough in a way to kind of manage time when, you know, quite a lot of businesses are heavily reliant on that.
Do you find it, sorry MK, do you find it eats into your studio time at all or distracts you whilst you're in the studio?
Not necessarily. Studio time is studio time at the end of the day. Kind of put your phone away and, you know, work on the music, and then every kind of not spur moment, but you know, you're always kind of thinking on social media never switches off, so your job never really quits, doesn't have an off switch.
A massive one for me, and I know a few other people at Rising Digital adhere to it as well, because we are in it all day, we switch all notifications off. So it's like down to us when we consume, like if we are actively going in to social media to be on social media, not because Harry commented on your post and it's come up in your feed halfway through your lunch, like you're choosing when to be on there. And the same should apply to artists, and we do advise that to them, because obviously once you get a little bit bigger, people are engaging with your social media all the time, and it just invades your day entirely. So that's like our like golden rule that we adhere to personally and would recommend to other people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I deleted the Facebook app from my phone. It just frees up so much time in the day. Are there any other tips if an artist signs with you guys to manage social? What are some of the pointers maybe you're giving them?
Every artist is different, and it really massively depends on them and their relationship with social media. Like there's people who flourish. Like we worked on a few creative things for Fisher, and he loves it. Like he's found his space, he thrives on social media. It doesn't have to be a negative place, and that's how it works for him. There's other people that come to us and they need the presence, but they don't want to do it themselves, so they have input along the way, but we primarily take that not a great word, sorry. But we take that load off them so they don't have to worry about it. So there aren't really there's not like a rule book that we have like tips and tricks that we would say you should do this or you should do this. Everybody is different, and we build our sort of plan based on that person and their relationship and how they function with it. And like I said to you guys backstage, your relationship with it is like your relationship with anything. Like if you have a bad relationship with alcohol, it's only going to go one way. You have to find how it works for you and what's healthy and how it works in your life.
Yeah, 100%. I think if someone's a massive extrovert, loves being in front of the camera, like a Fisher, then it works very well. But you're also going to get artists who are naturally quite introverted. How do you see social media being used for an artist who, say, is much less comfortable being in front of the camera, like Fisher? Yeah,
well, that's like actually one that I wanted to bring up, because not everybody is the same. So like, find out what interests you. Like, what would you want to see? Like, I know we work with Flux Pavilion, and we've basically created like a whole illustrated world on his socials, so he doesn't have to be like on his camera like, hey guys, like that's not him, it wouldn't work for him. So his like socials are made up of tours, releases, and then this illustrative world that there's like avenues to go down where you don't have to be someone that stands in front of a camera and talks. And people know if you're not comfortable doing that. It's transparent, so find what works for you. Like, are you into photography? Do you have are you a gamer? Like, is there something you can showcase alongside your music that isn't like necessarily giving people access to your entire life, but is giving people just enough that they're coming for a reason? Like, they can consume your music elsewhere. What are you giving them on your socials that's a combination of the two without your entire life being on?
Yeah, I think like your brand identity can differ from artist to artist. Your brand identity doesn't necessarily have to be your face, although like content that works for us best is like videos of us playing out, press shots, that kind of thing, you know. And you don't necessarily have to put yourself to the forefront of your brand identity. It could necessarily be like logos, very kind of graphic and imagery based, as MK said. So there are ways around it to still promote yourself or promote your content without actually promoting yourself, in a way,
Yeah, just to carry on from that is basically being authentic. That is in your music, in the way you present yourself. Just be you, because if you do that, first of all, you're already going to win by creating the music for yourself, so you've already won. Anybody else that likes the music, likes what you're putting out there, that's just a bonus to what you're doing. So, and the reality is, because you're being truthful, people will see that straight away, and there will be people that will buy into it, even if it's a niche or not. It's something that will connect with people.
I mean, I think it all just kind of boils down to understanding what your consumer needs actually are, and actually just filling the interests of your fans or your audience as such in the way that's best suited to you, but also repurposes what you want to kind of push out there,
Yeah, it's an interesting one, saying about how social media performs, different content performs. What ways or what benefits do you see there being of having all those analytics behind social media, and how might that affect how you either look at programming a tour or putting more records out or releases?
Well, I think it kind of boils down to, I find myself going back to the whole relevance thing. There was a time where it was kind of, there was no gigs for maybe 2 months, and it was, hard to kind of drum content together. And then we were sitting on however many unreleased tracks, and I thought it was kind of best to maybe put a track preview out there. That track preview then started blowing up on social media, on Instagram. We could see that it had been reshared on the analytics on Instagram are quite deep. If you've got a business account, I would advise anyone who is an artist to kind of switch from the personal to the business, so you can actually see the analytics. So we put one track preview out there and noticed that quite a lot of people were resharing it to their stories, resharing it to their friends, seeing the comments and likes kind of go through the roof, way higher percentages than our kind of normal reach to engagement ratio. And we've now started incorporating that into a social strategy almost, like when things are a bit drier, showcasing an unreleased track. And then I think it also kind of helps in essence when you're sending out to labels, so there's the A&Rs and things, if you are kind of keeping out there on socials, that when you do send an A&R of a record label like Defected or whatever, they've already seen the track on socials and they've already kind of seen it out there. But again, what works for me might not work for someone else, and I think understanding your consumer engagement is key to growth.
No, for sure. Scott, I mean, obviously YouTube's got loads of analytics in the back end. How do you use those analytics to guide, your business strategy effectively?
Yeah, so it has a ridiculous level, to the point I can see the city that people are watching. And diving into it makes it massively useful if you're going down a promotion route, you're looking to spend money. Because at one point, looking through my analytics, I found I had a big load of people watching in the Netherlands and specifically in Amsterdam. So I knew next time I ran a promo, I can target the 23 to 30 male demographic in Amsterdam. That's super specific, but I know there's already that audience there. So for some reason that I'd never figured out, I was building an audience up there. And yeah, using it in that sort of way, you can be super specific. It massively reduces the money you're going to go and spend when you go down that route. Equally, just building up and knowing who your demographic is and being able to target them in who you talk to, how you address them, the kind of content that's going to be useful for them. It's just massively overwhelmingly useful, but you need to build up enough sort of momentum, I guess, to have sort of value in those analytics as well. And it depends on the platform you're on as well. It's going to vary wildly. If you're on Facebook, you're going to see a much older demographic than you're going to find on Snapchat, for example. So you need to understand where you are, where you're going to be putting your content, and who it needs to be in front of. But yeah.
And I think that can really be beneficial from MK's perspective, where you've got a team around an artist, where you can kind of understand the demographics that you want to hit and you want to target. If they are performing well, then the agent can then go ahead and book a Netherlands tour and monetize it as best way possible.
Yeah, I was just going to follow on with exactly what you said about you can use those analytics. So if you are popular in Holland, rather than necessarily if you're struggling to get a booking agent, start low cost and set up your own tour and go to the Netherlands because you know you've got a market there, or partner with a local promoter there. That's just one thing. And then it's the same with like albums and releases. If you know you're popular in a certain area, target that area because they're more likely to buy your track.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's interesting as well, like even using Facebook audience insights on yourself, and you can see like the demographics of your fans and almost build out that kind of profile, so you can then just start, as you said, creating content that you know that's going to resonate with them, and it'll give you other ideas.
Just a quick one on that, Rory. One that no one seems to dive into at the minute. There's a completely separate app for Spotify, like the Spotify for Artists app. Yeah, like there's
great.
no nods in the audience, so that's good. Like diving into that app gives you super analytics for who's playing your track, when they're playing it, how often they're playing it, what city they're from. Like get registered with Spotify, get your artist profile set up, and dive into that app for a few minutes each day and see what's going on. Especially if you've got traffic there, it's 100% worth it. And like if you are then looking to get booked and you do go to a booking agent, you can say, I've got 10,000 people listening in such and such city. Like why can't we get booked there?
Yeah, and I think what you can also do there is you can then kind of submit your tracks to Spotify for playlist consideration. That can then rocket into streaming numbers. Like there was one track, wasn't on a necessarily big label, that was maybe getting like 100 streams a week, and then submitted it for an editorial playlist, and it's now sitting at like 200k streams just off the back of it. So you know, Spotify is kind of very, very strong for growth as an artist, and I think that's kind of where your music will sit with the kind of average rave kind of visitor as such, or the average raver. They're going to be listening. They're not the DJ who's going to be streaming it or buying it on Beatport. It's your kind of average consumer. And if you can kind of understand that, Spotify is great for that.
Sorry. I was just going to say further to that with the playlists, what you can also do to get noticed easier by Spotify is if you have another artist that you know, swap tracks for playlists, because if you put the track from their playlist into your playlist, it's more likely to get noticed.
Nice. So if someone's not currently on Spotify in terms of having an artist account, what do they need to do when they go away from here to get to that position?
I think it's just artists.spotify.com. You basically register your Spotify account, like your premium account or your free account, whatever it may be. You link that to all your social channels, and then if you've got an email address associated with that, you then link it. Spotify will verify it just through your social channels. So again, without social media, you couldn't even get to that level. Just further from what we said earlier. You know, so again, it's a very strong platform, one that's benefited me and I know benefited others.
Cool. And how do you guys see social media and streaming sites going hand in hand?
I think they like massively complement each other, but I think they are, well, the lines are getting more and more blurred, but they are separate entities that can live without each other. But you can massively capitalize on the crossovers. Like if you have a track coming out at 5 p.m. on Spotify, premiere it at 4 to your YouTube community, that you're making them feel valued, they're getting exclusive listen, and then your track's out to the world anyway. So there's definitely like a crossover, and there's ways that you can use them both to really complement each other. The same with having it all populated. Like if someone discovers your music through Spotify and they want to know a bit more about you, make sure all your social handles are there, and vice versa. If you pop up in someone's Discover feed, make sure your link is going out to your streaming platforms, and that way they're finding out more about you from both perspectives.
I don't think they're going to stay separate for that much longer. Like Apple made a play at it right at the start when Apple Music came out. You could post photos. It was kind of going down the Instagram route. Loads of artists and ARs were on board with it, but it just kind of fizzled out. I can see Spotify doing something similar. I can see Spotify genuinely being a social platform in the future. I think it's a way they're going to go. Yeah. It's becoming an ad platform now. It's going to go down that route in some way.
I mean, I even find just from a business perspective, from future DJs, digital marketing, that Spotify are kind of very, very kind of pushy towards their new ad platform. It was in beta for quite some time, but again, really kind of cost-effective way to target really specific demographics. You can actually, there is a feature on there on Spotify Ad Studio to now push music as a new release. So again, that opens the doors for artists to then literally distribute. If they understand who is listening, you can then retarget that same audience with your new releases. It's something that I'm definitely going to be pursuing in the future. I think it's now, it pushes it out there to people who are really listening to similar music. We are in this sphere where, in the electronic music industry, where it is music focused. Music's at the core of everything we do. Without the music, there would be no social channels. So.
And there's features now that obviously you can share your tracks directly to Instagram stories, which is great. Rather than having to swipe up, people can click straight through. The canvases now share directly to stories, so that line is definitely getting blurred more and more. And hopefully they can interlink rather than Spotify being like some beastly social platform.
Yeah, definitely. That sends shivers through my spine, I think. I think as well is a really interesting dynamic between streaming and social in terms of the whole, we talk about marketing funnels a lot with the corporate world, but in terms of like the music funnel and your fan funnel. So at the top level, it's all about generating awareness and before you start getting into consideration. So streaming, and I think you kind of hinted at it, Caelan, streaming is like that first point of contact because they don't have to pay for it and they might just stumble across you in a playlist. Yeah. And then it's about, as you're rightly saying, making sure you've got all the links on your Spotify or SoundCloud or YouTube channels to then direct you on to your social media channels where you can start really engaging.
I mean, it's kind of taking that customer journey from the streaming right through to buying a ticket for your gig and being front and center of you playing that track out. That's where the streaming definitely helps. So the streaming, they'll find out about you, then they'll go and they'll see your social media. So the streaming will take them from Spotify to social media to your gig. That's kind of the customer acquisition journey as such, and I think that's kind of that helps you grow your fan base and then, in turn monetize your music as best way as possible.
Yeah, further to that, what I would say is always think about the customer, because you've got to think about how easy is it for them to access your music or the content that you're putting out there, because they've only got a finite amount of time. People's attention spans now are so short that if you make sure that the journey from Spotify to Instagram or wherever is easy, then you're less likely to lose them.
Yeah, you don't want them to drop off. Nothing worse when you put the time in. I guess before we kind of leave streaming, are there any ways that you can use social media to drive more streams other than adverts if you're not willing to pay?
Yeah, in this sense where if you've got track previews, you can just constantly kind of almost barrage your socials with that track and constantly point it to streaming. So your fan base are already going to be engaged with your music anyhow, but if you're constantly keeping them aware that it is there, the likelihood is that the more times they see it, law of averages dictate, that they will then, the more times they see it, the likelihood is that they will eventually then go and stream it, just with whatever audience you have, if it's 100 followers, if it's 10,000.
Stories is a great way to push streaming as well. Like you can literally post, like Instagram actually recommend 15 stories a day, which is not necessarily achievable for most people, but like you can literally put as much up there as you want, and if 50% of that's streaming, then the likelihood is it's going to get in front of most of your followers at some point in the day. So that's a good way to just keep pushing.
Definitely. The Spotify connecting with Instagram stories is such an awesome little tool. Just quickly touching on that, if we are saying you need to post 15 stories a day, and that's obviously not essential for everybody, but are there any ways of keeping that volume of posting up on social media so you are playing to the algorithms, but at the same time, I guess, making it easier or doing it in a way that creates some sort of economy of scale?
You can definitely sharing other people's content. It's all about shareable content. So if you see something in your feed, just share it to your story. There's one ticked off. It doesn't have to be you thinking, well, I need 15 raw pieces of video that I've gone out and filmed today. There's different avenues. You can share your tracked stories, share someone else's poster stories. There's loads of different options, and it's quite versatile. It doesn't need to be one set thing that kind of consumes your day.
Yeah, 100%. The sharing other people's stories is one of my favourite things. Or sharing other people's posts is just a really great way.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say to that as well is consistency. Fans, they like to know that when they log on, they're going to kind of almost expect a post from you, like a funny meme or whatever, new tracks come out, these kind of things. So if you can develop some kind of consistency, like with our artists, what we do now is around each time a track or an EP gets signed, we then create a timeline. And that timeline is for basically the release. And it won't necessarily be from the time it's signed. It'll be maybe 2 weeks, a week before release, so that you've got enough content to keep going consistently throughout, because the lead time is getting shorter and shorter now. But then in between that, like you're saying with the stories, it's like just for myself personally, I'm not like massively into social media, but I'll sit there for like 10, 15 minutes in the evening. I'll follow a few new people. They'll come up with good top content. I'll start sharing, and then it becomes a habit each day for 10, 15 minutes. I share like 10 stories, and then it helps with that engagement.
And I think it actually, like the fan engagement as well, can help here. So if you get the level where you're lucky enough to have people tagging you in their stories, that's content in itself that other people are creating that then purposes it towards your story. There's nothing better than seeing some guy sitting in Ecuador streaming your track and playing on his decks at home. It's just the power of music,
Yeah, for sure. So I guess what we've heard this morning or this afternoon is that it's very much a double-edged sword. There's some definite pitfalls of social media, but there are also, when used correctly, there are some really big advantages, especially when it comes to just scale. Quickly, before we wrap up in the last couple of minutes, are there any kind of do's or don'ts that you see?
A massive don't for us is do not buy followers. Like, it might be tempting because promoters unfortunately now look at your follower count first, but it's better to build that. It'll take time, but build that audience that are there for you. Like, Facebook and Instagram aren't stupid. They know when you've got followers, it will completely shoot your reach and your organic growth. And people know now, if you've got 10,000 followers and a post with one like and a comment that says, wow, like, you've quite clearly bought followers. So just take time, be patient, build an audience that are there for you. That's like our biggest no-no.
Yeah, just furthering on from that, I would say do be reactive with your social media. Take the time to actually invest in your fan base, in your audience, liking, commenting back, replying to stories, replying to tags, replying to comments. Because then your audience will be more respectful of you as an artist.
But do it all within a set period of time. What about you, Jack?
Just be authentic, just be yourself.
Don't focus on the numbers, focus on the content and the value of that content. Like, don't be looking at your followers and the number of likes. If one person likes it, someone took time out of their day to consume it, and you've succeeded there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it will come. In society, we want to have everything now. We want to have it just overnight success, and really it's about investing that time and letting it grow kind of organically in a way, because that will bring you closer to those 1,000 true fans. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope we've had some good insights. I'd like to thank the panelists for their insights. It's been awesome, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the time today and tomorrow.